Most people assume that commanding a room requires hitting the genetic lottery. We think social magnetism belongs to the extroverts, the physically beautiful, or celebrities with carefully managed public images. Watch an interview with Priyanka Chopra. Her ability to pull you in has little to do with her fame. She speaks with a quiet certainty, no filler, no hedging, and seems completely unbothered by the need to impress anyone. She is using a specific toolkit. Social magnetism isn't an innate personality trait. It is a set of learnable, practical microskills that can be measured and practiced. To see how these skills work, we are going to map them across the lifespan of a single social interaction. We'll follow the timeline from the very first impression to the final exit. By looking at these skills chronologically, we can see how small adjustments to your behavior change the way a group responds to your presence. The interaction begins with the approach. Your first move is to claim physical and conversational space. Magnetic people establish presence before they even speak. They avoid physically shrinking, hunching over, or using an apologetic tone when entering a room. They behave as if they belong at the table. Olympic medalist Eileen Gu illustrates this. When interviewers try to undermine her accomplishments, she doesn't shrink. She stands by her wins and speaks with a pace that refuses to be rushed, effectively claiming the space as her own. To hold that attention, you have to be a walking contradiction. If you can be neatly categorized into one box, like the shy one or the athlete, you become predictable. Our brains use mental patterns to understand people quickly. Psychologists call it a schema violation when someone breaks that pattern. Shattering a predictable category forces others to pay closer attention. When an athlete is also an artist, or a tech investor is also a film star, it creates curiosity. The brain spikes in attention because the version of you it had in its head no longer explains who you are. A magnetic first impression doesn't rely on being polite. It relies on projecting authority while giving the listener a mystery to solve. In the middle of a conversation, magnetism shifts toward how you listen. Insecure speakers often compete for airtime, trying to prove they are the smartest or funniest person in the room. Constantly interrupting or trying to top someone else's story can be socially exhausting. It signals a need for validation that actually pushes the group away. This diagram shows the Ben Franklin effect. When you ask thoughtful questions and invite someone else's input, they feel heard. Their brain then associates that positive feeling with you, increasing your likability while you speak less. High-profile interviewers like Alex Cooper use this to their advantage. By avoiding autopilot questions and asking things that make a guest pause and reflect, they create a memorable anchor in the conversation. When you do speak, your credibility depends on clean speech. Filler words, the ums, likes, and actuallys, act as verbal static. They are what the mouth does while the brain is still loading the next thought. During this phase, magnetism is about ensuring the other person feels genuinely heard. You intentionally give them the floor, ensuring that when you do finally contribute, you do so with unhurried clarity. All deep, meaningful conversations eventually hit friction. Magnetic people don't avoid this. They know how to state their opinions clearly and disagree without starting a fight. There is a link between likability and the willingness to take a stand. Someone who is competent but willing to take a specific, sometimes inconvenient position is often more memorable than someone who plays it safe to avoid all friction. We often dilute our thoughts with pre-apologies like, "I might be wrong, but," or "sorry if this sounds harsh." This signals to the listener that you aren't confident in your own words before you've even said them. The formula for healthy disagreement is to acknowledge the other person's framing first, which lowers their defensiveness. Then you clearly state your own view without aggression or backing down. Confidence doesn't have to be loud to be effective. By introducing calm, direct friction, you become the reference point that the rest of the conversation naturally begins to orbit. The final test of magnetism is how you handle tension and the eventual exit. When pressure rises, many people default to nervous laughter or send long, over-explaining messages to justify a decision. These are submission signals. They are unconscious attempts to seek approval from the room. By rushing to fill the silence, you are the first person to undercut your own position. High-status individuals use emotional non-reactivity. They hold a moment of discomfort or silence without needing to resolve it. They absorb pressure rather than reacting. Finally, you have to know when to leave. This is where the peak end rule in cognitive science becomes critical. This graph illustrates how memory weights an experience. We don't remember the average of a conversation. Instead, the brain favors the highest emotional peak and the final moment, while the details in between become less distinct. Magnetic people use this by exiting while the conversation is still good. They leave while the energy is still high, creating a sense of scarcity that makes others want to pick the conversation up later. Charisma is an economy of behavior. By subtracting nervous habits and controlling the timeline of the interaction, you dictate exactly how you are remembered.